Hey, this is B from Kongzerus, and the last couple of days I've been fuming. I've been a little bit furious about what might be happening with Arcade1Up's Fast and Furious cabinet, and it kind of sucks. All right, so last week on Thursday, I joined GameTime on the Tech Buzz with Jade, She Lion, Retro Bill, Moat, and Steve from Tech Buzz. And we're talking about Fast and Furious, about stuff that was missing because of the 8 cars that were listed in the cabinet. But when Travis MCP joined, and he gave us the inside scoop on what might be happening with the game, it gave me some cause for alarm. I started going down a rabbit hole of trying to figure out really what the differences are between the original Fast and Furious arcade version and Fast and Furious Drift. I've not been too familiar with these games at all playing up, but I've been emulating them recently, so I got a feel for Fast and Furious. I did a whole hour-long gameplay of the original Fast and Furious game, which I thought would be the version of the game that would be on the cabinet. Turns out we might be completely duped, and that version of the game isn't on the cabinet at all. Based on what Travis is saying, listen to what he says here.
But correct me if I'm wrong, most if not all of the tracks from Fast and Furious are in Drift. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, well, that answers the last question that I had. So this game is basically Drift divided into two.
Yeah.
Literally. So they apparently have taken the code base, because it's the same basic code base, taken Drift and then cut it in half, and then one is Fast and Furious with its things, and then the other half is Drift with its things. And that's why everything looks like it's coming from Drift, because technically it is.
So based off of what he was saying, that Tokyo Drift, or the Drift version of the cabinet, is the main game that the cabinet is using, but is just taking the original tracks and then calling it Fast and Furious. I was like, I couldn't believe that. Is that true? That would be like taking Cruisin' World, and you know, if Cruisin' World had the original Cruisin' USA tracks on it, and you played that game with the Cruisin' World cars, it's still Cruisin' World. You can't call it Cruisin' USA. So, I mean, I had to look a little bit deeper to see what the differences are. So let's take a look at some of the gameplay of the cabinet from Fast and Furious, so we can see the differences in both the car selection lineup and the track selection lineup that's listed in the Arcade1Up app. All right, here's the Techno Parrot version of the game. You see the keypad there, that's definitely not going to be on the cabinet. And when you press start, you can see the track selection list. Now let's take a look at the track selection. Let's go back a second. The track selection there, starting at the beginning, you have Times Square, but the next one is called Race Wars. This is really key because Race Wars is only in the original Fast and Furious game. If you look at the app, it calls it Mojave. Note that, okay? Race Wars is on the original track, not on the other one. Here's the rest of the track list. We can see Chinatown, Malibu, Central Park, LA Ghetto, Golden Gate, New England, Hollywood, SF Tour, and then Mulholland Drive in Chinatown X. So these are the original 12 tracks that are on the Fast and Furious game that are stated definitely in the app are on the cabinet, but there's that difference there. Okay, now let's move into the car selection menu. This is another area that's very different. First off, right from the get-go, you have the Toyota Supra, the Nissan 350Z, the Pontiac Firebird, Mitsubishi Eclipse, the Toyota Celica GTS, the Nissan Skyline, the Pontiac GTO, the Nissan 240SX, the Chevy Corvette, the Dodge Charger, the Toyota MR2 Spider, and the Mitsubishi Evo. These are 12 different cars that are on the original Fast and Furious game lineup, and several of them aren't on the list, and some weird ones that are on the list on the app, as you can see here, don't exist in this version of the game. So that's another big concern right there. All right, so once you select your car and you get everything going, you get into the upgrade screen. So here on the upgrade screen, there's only 6 upgrade options. There's NOS, spoiler, decals, tires, ground effects, and engine. But look at the upgrade kits that are available on the app for Fast and Furious. There's 7 things there. There's engine, there's body kit, and that's only on the Drift version of the game. So all that's to say is that I think it's interesting that they're calling the drift version of the game Fast and Furious when there's like some gameplay functionality mechanics that are fundamentally different, at least from the stage selection and even the car selection screen. So the gameplay, here's you can see the layout of Fast and Furious when you're playing the game. The start screen probably a little bit different. Maybe that lady is not there on the drift version of the game. But here it is. This is Fast and Furious. This is the version of the game that I thought we would be getting. Turns out it's gonna be drift. So let's switch over gears and take a look at the drift version of the game. Alright, here's the Techno Parrot version of Drift, and this has graphical issues, yes I know, but we're going to be looking at the screen more than anything. Here's the stage select menu. Let's go ahead and start off by taking a look. Yes, going back to the stage select menu, there's now Mojave instead of Race Wars, instead of, you know, the desert that you're in. I guess it's technically accurate that people wouldn't know what Race Wars is in terms of a location. It's the Mojave Desert, yes, but they changed the name of the track from the original game. So you have Chinatown, Malibu, Central Park, LA Ghetto. Those are still from the original game. The 7 tracks at the top are the new tracks for Drift. Shibuya, Sato, Shinjuku, F&F Drift Tour, Kyoto Mountains, Takoyama, Nagano Temples. These are the drift specific titles or tracks that were added to the original one. So they're saying like this was an upgrade to the original game. So you have the original tracks, but you have these new tracks. So I get that this is an upgrade. Yes, these are all the same tracks that you see there, but here's the big thing here. Besides automatic and manual, let's get into the car selection screen menu. This is where it gets really interesting. And again, I apologize for the graphical issues for this version of the game, but this is where the 8 games list comes from. The original game for Fast and Furious had 12 different cars that you can select from by default, and you can only have 8 of them on the title. So there's some that aren't on here. Right now you have the Ford GT Mustang, which is listed on the app. You still have the Dodge Challenger Concept. You don't have that on there. Pontiac Solstice GP, the Mazda cars are not on there. Mazda RX-7, Ford GT, Nissan 350Z, the Saleen twin turbo is on there. The Nissan Skyline's on there. The Dodge Viper is not on there, sadly. You don't have the Mazda RX-8 as well. You have the Chevy Camaro concept car. So you have 8 cars. There's 7 that are listed here. They also say kind of Ford GT and then Ford Mustang and then Ford Mustang GT. But in terms of this list, I don't see the difference. Maybe this is that hidden car that's right there that I can't quite access because you have to unlock it. I don't know what that 8th car is, but these are the cars from Drift that are fundamentally different than the original Fast and Furious. And this is my point. Playing these cars on the old tracks doesn't make it the original Fast and Furious game. It's essentially drift on those old cars. You're using the drift cars for that game. So that's the big issue that I have with it, is using the drift name and the cars themselves on the older tracks and calling it Fast and Furious, I believe is misleading in terms of it. So here are the upgrade kit selection screens. So here you can see the 7 different things that are listed exactly in the app. You have decals, tires, neon, NOS, NTO, body kit, spoiler, and engine. You can start your race, so you can change the color of your car. So you have nice options. I think that the game fundamentally is pretty cool that you can upgrade your stuff, make it look custom and whatnot. But yeah, the game may run similar. The game may be run just fine with whatever version that they have on the cabinets. I just have issues. So let's go over my final thoughts. All right, so final thoughts. This is where I have the biggest issues, that this cabinet from Arcade1Up is called the Fast and the Furious Deluxe Arcade Machine. That this is showing the skin of the original Fast and Furious arcade game with the beautiful Mitsubishi Eclipse that's not even in the arcade game that you can select to play. It's not on the list of cars from the 8 cars. You can see here in the product details, it shows that there's 2 games, the Fast and Furious and the Fast and Furious Drift. And if you look at the app and the descriptions of both of the games, it says the original game's on there, but the Drift version, Raw Thrills, was an expansion to the original game that added new tracks and new cars while keeping the original feel. To some extent, yes, that's probably true, but in my opinion, this cabinet should have been called the Fast and the Furious Drift. It's one game. It's not two separate games. The user interface, the car list is drastically different. Let's go over the final, car count of what's missing from this game between the two cars. There's 23 total cars you could pick from. First off, the Toyota Supra is not there. The MR2 Spider is not there. The Toyota Celica is not there. The Pontiac GTO with Vin Diesel definitely not there. Pontiac Firebird not included. You do have the Skyline from the first game. You do have the 350Z. You don't have the 240SX. There's no Mitsubishi Evu, no Mitsubishi Eclipse, no Dodge Charger, no Chevy Corvette. Those cars are not here. You do have from the drift game, you do have the Saleen, you do have the Pontiac, you do have the Skyline, you do have the 350Z. No Mazda is on here. No RX-8, no RX-7. Ford Mustang GT is on there. And apparently there's a Ford Mustang non-GT version. There's a Ford GT, yes. There's no Dodge Viper. There's no Dodge Challenger concept. There is a Camaro concept. So those are your cars. 60% of the cars are not listed anywhere on this title. 60% of the cars between the two arcade games. You only get 8 out of the 23 cars you could have selected, and 2 of them are overlapping. This is $599 from Best Buy. Is this worth it? I don't know if it's going to be worth it in my opinion until we see some reviews and more gameplay. Maybe they can add more of the cars if they get licensed in the future. I think they've taken too many concessions with this one. You know, I did reach out to Arcade1Up to see if they could clarify any of these things, but based on what Travis was telling me and everything that I put together from the gameplay videos that you've seen, I'm a little disappointed that they called this Fast and Furious as the arcade game itself, because obviously it's drift. It should have been a drift arcade game. It's one title, they're calling it too. So that's it for this video. Let me know in the comments what you think, if this is something that they should have stated up front a little bit more. Should they have been giving us more gameplay of the menu selection to see what concessions they would have made? Maybe the casuals won't care. Maybe it's just us in this community that are really digging into the little nooks and crannies of things that are missing from these arcade game ports. Maybe we should just enjoy what we get and be happy with it. But for me, I'm disappointed that it was put out this way, that this was missing so much from the original arcade game. The more I've learned about the arcade game, I think fans of the actual arcade game are going to be disappointed. But Fast and Furious fans, you may be happy. So let me know. Thanks for watching this video. We'll see you next time. Bye.